Welcome to the Carl Nelson Show
on Washington, D.C.'s 1450 WOL Radio and live around the world on WOLDCnews.com.
And thank you for joining us, folks. Power Talkers, Dr. Claude Anderson and Minister Dr. Ava Muhammad will check in on the situation in Charlotte. State of emergency in that city following the shooting, death of an African-American man by the police. Dr. Ava Muhammad, as I mentioned, is going to be here. She represents the Honorable Louis Farrakhan, and she will be in town on Saturday at the African American Civil War Museum. The event starts at around 5 o'clock. We'll give you more information on that. Before we get to Sister Ava, though, the man with a plan, that's what we like to call him, Dr. Claude Anderson joins us. Dr. Anderson, welcome to WL Radio. Well, let me ask you this. Is marching still the answer? Here we are, it was 2016, and they're doing stuff that they did back in the 50s and 60s?
Well, so far, blacks have been marching now since about the 1850s, 1860s with Frederick Douglass, and they haven't moved 1 inch. Marching has no direct, immediate impact on white people and on the white power structure. They don't care about your marching. How does that imply sub-obligation to them? And how does that impact their pocket and their cash register for you marching? As a matter of fact, they see that as being a benefit in most instances. What they do when you start marching, they sell more shoes that you wear out. They sell clothes. They sell bus tickets, airline tickets, cab tickets, hotel reservation, food. As a matter of fact, I remember the Congressional Black Caucus came to town a few years back, about 10 or 20 years ago. They dropped about $96 million into Washington, D.C. And I dare say less than about a few $1,000 went into black folks' pockets. So the thing is not marching, Carl. The march is, where's your plan? What is it you're looking for? You're marching for what? What is the plan? What is your goal? What do you intend to achieve? What are your measuring steps? And that you're going to be able to account for? And are you marching for symbolism or are you marching for substance? And if you're marching for a substance, then it should be relating back to the major problem in America. I have never in my lifetime ever seen anything where black folk have even went near resolving the problem in America for black folk. That means blacks in elected office, civil rights organizations, in the pulpit, any place, on the street corner. They never have gotten anywhere close to it. And that's why all my years in politics, especially now that I got appointed to be over education for the state of Florida, I had Southern white elected officials and other people in major businesses come to me and say, Dr. Anderson, you represent the state. You're the first black to represent a state education system. That's everything from the public to the private, from the nursing schools to the universities. And you keep talking about stressing the fact that you do something for black folk or black folk will be upset. They say, we have no respect for black folk because we don't respect their leadership. There's nothing in the black community that would prompt us to respect any black leadership. Because there's no connecting line between putting a black person in a political office and black folk getting benefits. And I did a study on that in 1960s. And I looked at the number. I looked at the benefit at the number of black elected officials, Carl, in the entire United States in 1960. At that time, we had 103. Now, how much? And then you write that number now, 103, just 3 over 100. The black elected officials in the United States. I looked at the social discomfort indicators in the United States. That's welfare, food stamp, public housing, imprisonment, dysfunctional schools, on down the line, drug abuse, everything you could think of. And I looked at those discomfort indicators in 1960 with 103 elected black officials. I looked at it again 30 years later in 1990. And because at that time, the number of black elected officials in the entire United States had gone up from 103 to over 9,000. And I said, with a 9,000% increase, there should obviously be some appreciable or measurable appreciation and improvement in the standard and quality of life of black folk in America. I looked at it and did an analysis and found out not only did black folk not improve in the quality of life in America by 1990, they went backwards because there's no connection between putting a black person in office, in any office, from the White House to the outhouse, where black folk get any measurable, tangible benefits. And personally, I'm sick and tired of seeing people looking for symbolism, emotional gratification by going out and marching and doing nothing that delivers a plan and a specific strategies to remedy major problem in America. And the problem, Carl, in conclusion of what I'm saying, the problem is that nobody has addressed what happened to black folk as a direct result of 360 years of slavery. that maldistributed 99.5% of everything of value, of importance, land, resources, power, businesses, rights, and privileges. Everything you can think of was delivered into the hands of the dominant white society. That's why in 1860, when blacks came out of slavery, they owned 0.5% of the wealth of the richest nation in the country, in the world. And here they are 150 years later with 0.5%. Nobody is addressing the problem. The problem is that black folk do not own and control a sufficient amount of anything to be a competitive group. You show me when the Congressional Black Caucus has moved to remedy and eradicate and those circumstances that were imposed on black folk over 150 years ago. When they started doing that, instead of walking around marching, talking about we want something that's intangible. We want something that you can't feel, touch, and smell. We want something that's uncountable. We want freedom, equality, equal opportunity. Martin Luther King's birthday, Black History Month, or streets named after Rosa Parks. That has nothing to do with the dilemma of black folk and their suffering. They own and control nothing. They cannot compete. And with 0.5% of anything in value in the richest nation on earth.
So basically, you're saying we need to have something tangible, some land or something, or what? Money?
Definitely. How the way you're going to compete in a society where you own nothing? And I look around, go back to slavery again, because the slavery process, it didn't happen to black folk by accident. It was inflicted on them intentionally to maldistribute all the resources away from them. And this nation had 3 or 4 major opportunities to correct that maldistribution. They had it when they signed the Declaration of Independence back in 1789. They didn't do it. What they did in the next year is set up a nationalization and immigration law in 1790 that started bringing in other people from other countries. And they said and put them in a ranking order of social acceptability. And out of that, they formed what they call now the American dream. So we'll go around the world and tell any and everybody on the earth, you can come to America for the American dream. And the American dream will be free Indian land and free black labor. And black labor brings 90% of the value to the land. And as a direct result of that, now I'll be a little more definitive later, they maldistributed over 1 billion acres of land into the hands of Europeans and other groups coming into this country, and not anything into the hands of black folk. And on that land, not only was the value instilled in the value of the land, but it's also in the timber, the gold, the chrome, the bauxite, the gas, the oil, the mineral rights. And all the values in that land for that 1 billion acres have doubled and tripled in value every 20 or 30 years since the 1860s. And here black folk are owning nothing. And they keep talking about, well, they can compete. How? Well, they can learn how to play with a ball. They can learn how to sing and dance and tell jokes. And they can be safe and keep their mouths shut and don't do anything relating to black folk. They can run for a public office, get in there and look for a salary and try to have parties once a year. Or they can go get them a church, but they're never going to touch that issue. How can black folk compete and own and control nothing? And right now in this society, every group they fabricated every group you can possibly think of needs to be fabricated under the benign neglect policy, what they call political correctness. They fabricated gender groups and women, gays, Hispanic, midgets, humpback, people with ingrown toenails and hemorrhoids. And say, we'll put you into a protected class and give you benefits. We'll give you all the privileges that we should have given the black folk. And then the rights that should have gone to black folk, we'll put black folk in a broad, ambiguous category and pretend that they don't exist, and we'll give the benefits to you. And that's what's going on right now to the present time, this day. And if you don't have any power and wealth and control to protect yourself, you're always going to wind up being under the gun of the police department. Can you hear me?
Well, yes, we can hear you. Let me ask you this, because I know we're coming up on a break, but, the federal government is thinking of bringing more Syrians in. Is this something we should applaud, or is something that should concern us? After all my years in all levels of politics, from the highest to lowest in politics, to the highest to lowest in education, the highest to lowest in business, highest to lowest everything you can think of, I cannot understand the inappropriate behavior pattern of black folk. For them to even have that question arise in their mind, should we be protesting? Hell yeah, you should be contesting it. Why would you let people keep coming in here getting benefits and that you don't get? And why would you let people go around and pretend that somehow that all of you are equal? That they put you in these broad categories called minorities and poor folk and people of color and diversity and multicultural, and give a pretense that somehow all of you all have experienced the same negative conditions. All right, hold that thought, Doc. We got to take a quick break. Hold that thought right there. 800-450-7876. Speak to Dr. Claude Anderson. Taking calls next on 1450 WOL, where information is power. And thanks for rolling with us. We're with one of our power talkers, the man with a plan. His name is Dr. Claude Anderson. Number to call to speak to Dr. Anderson, 800-450-7876. Dr. Anderson, I'm going to let you finish up your response with my question about letting other immigrants in.
Right. Well, see, the whole point is that was always a problem with black folk, because when the construct was set up in the Constitution and followed by the 1790 nationalization law, it said that all the people in a ranking order of skin color, going from the whitest to the darkest, would be acceptable into the United States, and for the dark and blacks would be on the bottom. The color would be white, yellow, brown, black. Those people could come into this country, and they would be entitled to the citizenship and all the various benefits that black folk have been denied. And that construct has not been changed. It is still functional. They had to change they had not, and never did. They could have changed it back in the 1964 civil rights laws and 65 civil rights laws. They didn't change it. What they did, they expanded but shut black folk down. Our civil rights leaders and our elected officials sat there and let it go down. Let that go down. What they said, well, it's been a zero quote on black folk, all these years, and there was a descending order of other people. There was a complete open door for anybody that was white coming from Europe, from England, France, and those places. And then later on, it got diminished down as you went to the Eastern and Western Europe, then to the Asians, and then to the Hispanics and Browns. But when it got to the black, it was zero, unless they came here as slaves. When the Civil Rights Law of 1964 and 1965 came out, what they said then is, well, we're going to change the civil rights laws and show you how liberal we are. Here's what we'll do. We'll expand it so that not that blacks can come in, but it be based on whether or not you got in a family abroad that you can contact and be in contact with, and you can orient into coming into American society. And they knew good and well in 1964 and 65 that not one single black had been able to came here as a slave that had any contacts or relatives still in Africa. That 99% of all the black people in America were the direct descendants of slaves. They had gotten any messages or packages from home, from Africa, and then say what they can bring in if they got an extended family. And they set it up so when they did that, they kicked the doors wide open for everybody but blacks to start bringing in people. And the black immigration coming to this country has remained way below 1/2 or 1%. I checked one year and out about 2,500 people coming in here saying they were African Americans. But only a few hundred of those were blacks. The rest were people coming in here from Africa, Pakistanis, East Indians, everybody else but black folk. And black folk but at least the people before the civil rights movement in 1960 had enough sense to figure it out. They might not have been as well as educated as blacks are today. They figured that out. That's why Martin Delany and Frederick Douglass and W.B. Du Bois and all the other blacks prior to the 1960s civil rights movement were totally adamantly opposed to immigration coming to this country. And what they were saying is keep these doors closed until you go back and solve the problems of this society that pertains to a long-suffering people. And the long-suffering people, these black folk, that the black folk that were engines that drove the development of this society. They're the ones that worked the fields and suffered and sacrificed. They were the ones that denied the culture, denied the language, denied the fruits of their labor, denied the marriage. They had their children and wives and women raped. They were the ones who couldn't get an education and couldn't own any property because it was classified as property. But what they did, they then turned around and after 1964-65 civil rights law, and by 1970 started bringing in all these new immigrants into the country. Between 1970 and 1990, that the number of immigrants coming to this country went up over 300 to 400%. That's why right now, in 2016, approximately 93 to 94% of all the Asians, Arabs, and Hispanics, and anybody, and these other immigrants in this country, 92 to 93 and 94% of them have been here less than 35 years. And yet they're coming here getting advantages and positions and authority, getting all the jobs and everything and the resources and privileges and rights that black folk are never getting. All these immigration laws have benefits that immigrants can get, but they don't give them to black folk. And that's why Obama now is putting up all kind of money for bringing in immigrants to take care of their children, to give $3.5 billion for Hispanic children down on the border of Texas so they can have clothes and food and housing and transportation. Now that why don't they put in $3.5 billion to go in and take care of all the black kids in Chicago and Gary, Indiana, and Pittsburgh, and St. Louis, and Ferguson? They don't do. That's where the money should be going. You should be addressing those issues pertaining to black folk. And by not doing it, that all your elected officials are violating the law, because all those civil rights laws, the 13th Amendment, the 14th Amendment, the 15th Amendment, they were set up for black folk. They were set up and designed to reverse the Dred Scott decision of 1857. The 1857 Dred Scott decision by the United States Supreme Court said that basically that black people and black men have no rights that a white man is bound to respect. That Dred Scott decision didn't have a darn thing to do with talk about minorities, poor folk, people of color, diversity, multicultural, midgets, humpbacks, women, gays, and transsexuals, or people with hemorrhoids and ingrown toenails. It was talking about black people. Now, how in the world are you going to turn around now and use those same civil rights laws that were designed for black folk? And they were stipulated. That's why the 14th and 13th Amendment says that black people in this country must now be treated in all manners similar to a white person in America. That's why the civil rights law said that the issue in this country is that you two things that a black person can be. They're either going to be free or they're going to be slaves. And minimally, they must get 40 acres of mule and $100 to be free. And Andrew Johnson killed that and gave them absolutely nothing. Set them free with no clothes, no housing, no land, no weapons, no tools, no farming equipment, nothing. And say, go out there and compete. And to this present time, what have black folk got to compete with? And everything I see designed in this country is given to other groups, not to black folk. And keep in mind, I'm not against those other groups. I'm against this nation's public policies that keep doing in black folk and promoting racism. You will never, 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 ever solve the race problem in this country until you wake up and get some people that got some sense in this country. They keep trying to pretend they're going to solve the racial issue in this country by taking race out of the equation. How are we going to solve a race problem by pretending there's no race? And say, well, we're all the same. That's the greatest insult you can ever inflict on black folk. It's an insult, and it adds insult to injury to somehow pretend that all these people coming in this country since 1970 are equal to black folk, which means they all have contributed equally to the development of this land. There can be no greater lie ever told than pretend that everybody coming to this country, from Europe, all the Italians, the Greeks, and Poles, the French, the Germans, the Asians, the Chinese, the Filipinos, the Eskimo, everybody is equal to black folk and gays and women. Nobody's discriminated against them. None of them have to pick cotton. You didn't have any boats coming in from around the world, bringing in gays, bringing in transsexuals, and putting them in the cotton fields. As a matter of fact, you had gays that were some of the biggest slaveholders in America were gays. And they had some of the biggest Asians. Even the blacks were slaves to American Indians in this country. Indians owned proportionally as many slaves as whites did. But nobody stands up for black folk in this country, Carl. I do. I do, because I'm standing on the yellow line. I have no dog in the fight one way or the other. But I'm sick and tired of people beating up on black folk, and nobody wants to go out and defend them. They elect people to office, and as soon as you put a black person in office, the first thing they'll say, I'm here to represent all the people. Then you shouldn't be in office, because that's not the premise you ran on. The premise of politics is called quid pro quo, something for something. One hand washes the other. And you scratch my back, I scratch yours. I vote for you, you owe me. And that's based, and yet I got black people in office that have failed to say, I got my first indebtedness is to those people who put me in office. They go into a public office and pick up a Bible, they swear an oath, saying, I hereby promise to protect and serve those people who put me in office. Now, how in the world can they walk out of that office and say, I'm here to represent all people in a nation of representative government? You live in a nation of representative government. American is a representative government. You're supposed to represent those people who sent you to office. Now, you go out and find all those black elected officials you just asked me about, the black congressional caucus, the black mayors, the black legislators, any of them, and you get you a pad, a legal pad, and you start writing down. So let me write down all the things that you've personally done to deliver tangible benefits to black folk in America over the last 50, 60 years. Write it down and see what you come up with. And if you come up with more than one thing, I would pay you for it, because all they want to do is write down symbolism. Well, we're for all people. Well, with Dr. Anderson, you got to look at it like this. We got people now in the Congress and in the state legislatures and in the White House. They pass money for building more bridges and highways. They pass laws to put more money into the school. They pass laws for Social Security and insurance. What in the world they got to do with black folk solving their problems? Because you see, those same things were going on when blacks were enslaved. The same thing going on for 360 years. Those same acts were going on through the 100 years of Jim Crow segregation. They were building roads and highways and had insurance programs. They had educational situations while blacks were enslaved, but it had nothing to do with improving the quality of life of those black slaves, or when they went into semi-slavery and Jim Crow segregation. It didn't lift them one iota. Anything that's for everybody is for nobody. Nobody. To solve the race problems, you must keep race in the equation and do some very specific things to redistribute some resources into the hands of black folk in America, Carl.
All right, we're coming up on a break. We've got a bunch of folks want to speak to you. David's been holding for a while. He's in Silver Spring, Maryland. David, you're on with Dr. Claude Anderson.
Yeah, Dr. Anderson, I've been seeing on television and everywhere these white people run around here and call themselves Cherokee, 25% Cherokee Indians, and they go to the White House and President Obama accept them as Native Americans. And they are doing all these things as Indians when they are not Indians, they are white people. How can they do these things? And also, do you think we can ever be able to form some kind of alliance with our Native American brothers and sisters?
Okay, let me take one at a time, Carl. I think I heard him. What the first one was, can you repeat it back to me, what he said?
Yeah, these white people running around talking about they're 25% Native American, and they'll call themselves Native American when they actually white people.
No, well, right. You're absolutely right. See, about 92% of all the people call themselves the Indians in America are Native Americans. First of all, they're not even Native Americans. If there's any Native Americans on the earth, it would be black people, Folsom people, or Moors that would be in America. Those are the native people of America. Moors, Folsom people, and black people. Those are the natives.
Indians.
Blacks were the native people on the earth. You're the original people, so you cannot come before the original.
All right, hang on, Doc. We got to take another break here. We got to check the traffic and weather in the DMV area, and we'll continue taking calls at 800-450-7876. All your calls next as the big show rolls on from 1450 WOL, where information is power.
WOL Radio.
And thank you for staying with us, folks. Just want to remind you, coming up later today, Dr. Ava Muhammad is going to join us, so tell your friends to lock us in right here on 1450 WOL. And also next week, Mark Manahan is going to join us. So let's go back to Dr. Anderson, though. Doc, I'm going to let you finish what you were saying about the questions about Native Americans.
Okay. Well, what I'm saying to is, first of all, see, they've been getting all these benefits, even though 92% of them, over 90% of them, are what we call $5 Indians. That means that when the Dawes Rolls came into effect after the Civil War, after the after the Civil War of 1860s, and it's in 1896 they put out the Dawes Roll. They go out and register all the blacks and freemen that were existing, because what had happened that Indians in proportional terms had owned as many slaves as whites did. Indians were slave traders, slave hunters, and they fought with the South to maintain slavery. And when they lost the war, just like the South, they lost their land and they lost all previous treaties. And so the government went in there and initiated new treaties with them called the 1866 Indian Treaties. And those treaties stipulated, was the Choctaw, Chickasaw, Cherokee, and all those so-called civilized tribes. They were civilized because they were owning slaves. That in the future, that the descendants of black freemen and black Indians must be treated in all manners similar to so-called Native Americans or those so-called slave-holding Indians. And yet, that has never happened. And consequently, even like President Obama has been in office now, since he's been in office, every year he's called about 564 so-called white Indians or passing Indians to the White House and given them $3.5 billion for a total of almost $20 billion. And this last year he gave them all the free radio stations license and TV license they wanted. But yet he's never invited all these black folk that the treaty stipulated should be invited. These black freemen and black Indians were entitled to equal benefits, and they haven't gotten them. And there was no justification for giving any benefits to descendants of Indians, as if somehow somebody had done something negative to them, because they said, well, according to what I learned is that we were Indians and we walked across this land. Well, before you walked across it, black folk walked across it, and you haven't given any benefits to them. And so now black folks should be getting up raising holy Cain now. We got lawsuits under the Freedmen's Federation to give those benefits. As a matter of fact, this is one thing you didn't know, and I just came to my mind, is that some of the attorneys for the Department of Justice, we've been suing the government for enforcement of those mandated treaty benefits for black men and black freemen for over 10 years now. And some attorneys, a couple of attorneys from the Department of Justice finally called our attorneys and said, look, we're willing to come in and settle with you on some of these issues. Because based on those treaties, black Americans and blacks are entitled to billions and billions of dollars. He said, we'll settle with him. We talked about a settlement, but before we can make it firm, we have to go back and talk to our superiors back in the Department of Justice, which you know is headed by a black woman now, and Obama's administration and Obama himself. They came back and called our people about another week later and said, I'm sorry, we can't do anything about a settlement of all these billions of dollars that have been owed to black folk for over 150 years because we were instructed by our superiors to do nothing on behalf of black folk. The black folk were entitled to benefits, and even they get them. And the last thing they do is this young man needs to know about is that the Indians sent a letter to the United States Department of the Interior in 1938 saying, how do we totally shut black folk out? We know we owe them benefits. They should be getting all the benefits we get. They should have gotten free land. They should be getting a free college education. They should be tax exempt, not paying taxes. They have a right to have casinos like we have. So how do we totally shut them out? And that letter bounced around in the Department of Interior until about 1941. And then went to the Bureau of Indian Affairs, then back over to Interior again. And what they told them is this. They said, what you need to do to shut black folk down in this country is change the criteria for benefits for black folk and put out the word and try to get Congress to support you. And it's saying that not only are not the blacks, we're going to shut blacks out, but we're going to make sure they get no benefits because unless they can prove beyond a shadow of a doubt that they got 25% Indian blood. That's called, it set up what's called a blood quantum law. That never was a part of the treaty, and it doesn't exist. But they said, now, unless a black can prove it, then therefore they are not entitled to anything. And the irony of that is that everybody on earth has black blood in them because the original people on earth were black folk. And here black folk got to try to use inappropriate behavior and go around trying to figure out how they can claim some Indian blood and white blood. That is outright stupidity. When people should be saying, hey, everybody on earth got black blood. And it should not be necessary for blacks to get benefits that these Indians are getting because some blood quantum laws that was fabricated. And black folks should be getting those benefits. They should have been getting them. But the Congressional Black Caucus won't stand up and fight for it. Nobody in the White House will fight for it. Nobody on the Supreme Court will fight for it. And white politicians tell me, Dr. Anderson, the reason blacks will never get the benefits that they're entitled to, that the Indian treaties signed to them, is because you have no black leadership in the country will stand up. This is coming from white congressmen telling me that. He said you have none of them having the backbone, and the rest that do have backbone don't have enough damn sense to do it.
All right, Doc, we got a bunch of folks who want to speak to you. And also we got a note here from the WOL newsroom. The district attorney in Tulsa says that police officer Betty Shelby will be charged with first-degree manslaughter in the death of Terrence Crutcher. So that's coming in just moments from the newsroom at WOL here in Washington, D.C., that the police officer who shot Terrence Crutcher will be charged with first-degree manslaughter. 800-450-7876. Go back to our calls. Charles III has been holding for a while. He's calling us from the district. Charles, you're on with Dr. Anderson.
Thanks for taking my call, Brother Carl. Doctor, I want to first say it appears you just took a couple of shots at Elizabeth Warren and Nikki Haley, the governor of South Carolina, because they call themselves Native Americans or so-called Indians there, and they've reaped some rewards from that. But what I have is a question that I hope you can help me out with, Dr. Anderson. President Obama said he wants his legacy to be continued by Hillary Clinton, and how he's revigorated the Civil Rights Division of the Department of Justice. And just this week alone, there was a report issued said that blacks' income relative to percentages of whites are at an all-time low, or as low as it's ever been since 1979. Number two, Fifth Third Bank was just fined $18 million for discriminating against black folks, charging them higher rates. And then President Obama last week was sneaking in the business leaders to ask to Congress saying a lame duck vote on TPP. Now, all of these are going to affect black people adversely. So my question to you, Dr. Anderson, is why am I not as excited about the legacy of President Obama? Because where we're headed economically doesn't appear to be on the upswing. It appears to be negative there. Can you comment on that? And then I have one quick question for Carl.
Well, the answer is very clear. It's obvious that you're a freak in the sense that you got enough sense to figure out something is wrong and you can smell it. The worst thing, the absolute worst thing that could happen to black folk in America is for a continuation of Obama's legacy. His legacy has been total avoidance to do nothing, absolutely nothing for black folk. And that's what Hillary Clinton's going to do. And to get to that point, I've tried to address that issue, I guess, over the last 3 or 4 months in this respect. I don't care who wins the race. I don't care whether Hillary Clinton wins or Donald Trump wins. I don't care whether Republicans win or the Democrats win. I was always a Democrat in my life until recently I got out of it because I think all of them are shucking and jiving and playing games and race matters now. And what I said, I would be delighted to come out of retirement. And I've crafted a contract with Black America. And I'm saying that whichever party or whichever candidate would sign this contract and promise an oath in a binding agreement, a document, saying that if they're elected to public office or the President of the United States, that they would deliver these specific tangible benefits to black folk. There are 7 elements on there that runs across everything from education to schools. This is where I set up new models for how black folk are to be treated. If they sign that contract and bind that under that contract, I would promise to deliver millions of black votes to them across America. Now, that went out to Donald Trump's people, and I guess in June. And he picked it up, and he's been running around the country, dancing, promising now that he's going to try to figure out how to do some things for black. And I give him credit for having enough sense to acknowledge that black folk have problems. But he wants to do it without picking up a couple of black folk who don't know a damn thing about a hill of beans in China and stick their faces on TV, just standing beside him and shaking his hand and shucking and jiving. And he thinks that way he can get the black vote and without honoring a contract to deliver benefits, tangible benefits to them. Now, Hillary on that side with the Democrats, they figure they can get the benefits and get black vote without just by keeping quiet, pretending that they're going to do the same thing they've been doing for the last 150 years for black vote, which is nothing, and get the black vote. And they understand clearly that is impossible. It is right now. It is impossible in practical and theoretical terms for Hillary Clinton or the Democrats to win the presidency without 90% of the black vote. And black folk in the last election, at 2008 and 2012, the blacks turnout was higher than whites. Now, and typically whites only give Obama like about 51% of the vote, something like that, of their vote. But Hispanic and Arab votes is always down around 30%. And the worst thing black folk can do is to try to vote for anybody to continue the legacy of Obama. Legacy Obama is this one thing. First of all, he's going to set a legacy that would make it possible for black folk to be kept in the 17th century. His legacy is do nothing for black folk, don't recognize them, don't deliver any tangible benefits to them, and that legacy would go to every subsequent president in the United States. Any white who gets elected to the office in the future would say, if President Obama in his legacy did not do a damn thing for black folk, not only for the 12 years in campaigning and holding the office in the White House, but also the previous years he had as a senator and a representative. He did nothing for black folk in 16 or 17 years. Why in the world do I owe black folk, and why should I do anything? His legacy would be that now whites got a codified excuse to never do anything for black folk for the next 200 or 300 years. That's the legacy.
Well, one final question, Carl. You're going to have Dr. Muhammad on later. Mm-hmm. And we're less than 30 days from the 1-year anniversary of the Justice or Else. We haven't gotten justice, so can you ask her what is the or else? I'm waiting for the or else. And thanks a lot, brother, and I enjoy your show.
All right. Thanks, Charles. Doc, I got a question, too, for your tweet question. I want to know if a targeted boycott would work this day and age, because, I think it's Isaiah Washington, the actor. He's calling for a boycott on Monday. So, and some of the members of the nation actually in Charlotte are calling for a boycott. Can boycotts work these days? Yes,
they can. That's one of the best alternatives you got. You can boycott, but I would call it withholding your support for anything. And that's even a better term. You don't have to say boycott. Just say you're going to withhold your support. And withholding your support to be based on a very simple premise of renegotiating your relationship. Now remember that, Carl. Withhold your support and renegotiate your relationship. Who do you do it with? You do it not only with every political party, the Republican and Democratic Party. You're going to say we're going to withhold our support, and we're going to renegotiate our relationship. You cannot continue to subordinate us and put other people coming to this country over us and above us. We aren't going for it. That's one thing. And secondly, renegotiate your relationship with major corporations in America. All these major corporations that are subsidizing things like O'Reilly and Hannity and Rush Limbaugh. you started withholding your support of those primary sponsors of those programs. They advertise and say, you keep putting some of these racists on TV against us, we're going to withhold our support and don't spend it. We're going to get 1 penny of our money. Start hurting them in the pocket. Secondly, you renegotiate your relationship with your black overclass. That means these black civil rights leaders and black elected officials who do absolutely nothing for black folks, so they're so locked into trying to get white money by representing minorities and poor folk and people of color and multicultural and diversity and all that crap. They do that intentionally because that was set up in the Constitution way back years ago. And Ronald Reagan said it best in 1982 after I left the White House, saying that if you ever want to do something about black folks, don't say it publicly. Just bury them in very broad and ambiguous terms.
Right. So hold that thought right there, Doc. We got to take a quick break. We're at the top of the hour. 800-450-7876 gets you on to speak to Dr. Claude Anderson. All your calls next as the big show rolls on from 1450 WOL, where information is power. And thank you for staying with us and our guest, the man with the plan, Dr. Claude Anderson. Again, the number to call, speak to Dr. Anderson, 800-450-7876. And repeating once again from the report from the WOL newsroom, the prosecutors in Tulsa, Oklahoma have filed first-degree manslaughter charges against the police officer who fatally shot Terrence Crutcher. So I know all eyes will be on Charlotte now, see if similar action is taken. Dr. Anderson, you want to finish what you're saying, or do you want to take another call?
Well, no, let me make one other announcement right now. It's critically important, and in regards to what I've been saying to you, Carl, and I want people to understand is that I'm personally not against anybody. What I'm against is our nation's public policies that continue to make racism an issue. It's like the Super Bowl for sports. It's strictly racism and race issues now in America. It's like a form of entertainment. Both on the whites and blacks, they're all playing with it while people are being killed and murdered all over the country. And I want that to stop. That's the first thing. And the best way to try to understand that is by getting Powernomics books. Powernomics is the roadmap for black empowerment and a better life for black folk in America. These books are written like no other books. And the kind of information you might hear coming out of my mouth in those books to explain what you should be doing and how you should be going about doing it, to get past the social construct you're in and to be able to begin to use strategies to empower yourselves. And you can get it simply by, first of all, you can get these books by either going to calling the corporate office for Powernomics Corporation, which is 301-564-6075. Again, to call the corporate office is 301-564-6075, or they can go to the internet, Powernomics Corporation there, powernomics.com, POWERNOMIC.com, and you can order them off the internet, or you can go to Amazon. And when you get there, get what's called a Power Pack. You can get all 4 of these books. These are the best books that have ever been written on this earth for black folk. And they are serious, and they can show you how to do it. And you can get all 4 books for $70, which is a special buy for them. Because of the seriousness of our times, black folk need, every one of them should have those books and should be reading them. Then there are 4 books. One is called Black Labor, White Wealth, that Ebony and Jets calls the second Bible for black folk around the world, and people buy it all around the world for black folk. That's in France, Germany, Africa, Montreal, the Caribbean. That's the Bible for black folks. Show you exactly how every trick, technique, custom, law was used to socially engineer black folk into a lowest level of a real-life monopoly game based on what you own and control. Because they know civil rights and social integration is a game. It does nothing for black folk. It cannot help black folk. The second book is called Powernomics. It says now that you're lowered into a lowest level of a real-life monopoly game, racism is not perfect. You can't beat it, and here's how you beat it. And that book would take you through 8 chapters showing you exactly how to beat the racism in this country and become a power group and be able to compete economically. Not to hurt anybody, but to compete economically. You compete with Asians, Arabs, and whites just like the Dallas Cowboys compete with the Washington Redskins. You play to win, but you do not play to hurt anybody and abuse them and misuse them. And the last thing you do is to be able to understand, to get those books, and you get the DVDs, and that way, Carl, you have a better understanding of how to answer some of these questions that you're asking me presently.
All right. Before we go, I'll let you give out that information again. 800-450-7876. Line 3, James is calling us from Buffalo, New York. James, you're on with Dr. Anderson. Is James still with us in Buffalo?
Yes.
All right, let's go. All right, go ahead, James.
Yes, hi, Carl. And it's great listening to Dr.
Anderson.
Yes. How you doing, sir?
Fine, sir.
Great. I just have a question about, you just mentioned civil rights, leaders and civil rights leaders. And my question is, they seem to be very limited. And I was just wondering I know that they seem to work in the system. I wonder if the system itself limits their ability to do much. And because of maybe them signing, contracts 20, 25 years ago and didn't foresee what's going on now, the contracts or whatever they sign with the establishment that they're working through, getting paid through, did it exclude, anything beyond boycotting, and barely that, especially during Christmas. They don't seem to advocate boycott during the Christmas holiday and things like that. But in a nutshell, my question is, are they being limited by some entity? I just thought you might be able to answer that question.
All right. Thanks, James. Doc, are they being restricted, the civil rights groups?
First of all, he's absolutely right. See, basically what I'm saying to you, and not to be negative or overly hostile, it appear like I'm overly hostile or something, is that basically our civil rights leaders and our black elected officials, by and large, and they're basically good-hearted people. See, that's not the problem. They're not evil, necessarily mean people. They're someone who's just selfish, and they're out there like a Judas looking for their 30 pieces of silver. That's the problem. That's one of the problems. But the biggest problem is that they just didn't see far enough down the road and what was going to happen. And all the concepts they were pushing, the civil rights concepts and the language of the civil rights movement, it was intentionally corrupted by conservatives in the country. They took everything that black folks were espousing in the civil rights movement and turned it upside down and inside out, and now use it against black folk. When black folks said, we don't want you to discriminate against us based on our color, they said, fine, now that we can't use color anymore, then you got to leave everything like it is. You just took the equation out. I parked the car on your foot, and now if I can't use race to get, I use race to put it on your foot, but if I can't use race to get it off, it's got to stay on your foot. They took every concept. We start talking about a colorblind society that Martin Luther King talked about. They use that against you by saying, well, Martin Luther King said we can't be judging a man doing anything based on color. And the Supreme Court uses that against black folk. They got you locked in box by having corrupted and abused and the concepts of civil rights and the language. That's got you boxed. The second thing is that these civil rights organizations, they're basically bound into major corporations. They found out after the civil rights movement they did not need black folks' nickels and dimes and pennies anymore, and most of them locked into these major corporations. And they got to go in there on their hands and knees and beg for money just to be able to keep themselves operative. And and every one of those corporations will tell them straight up, yes, we will give you civil rights organizations some money every year, but one thing you must do, you must take the focus off of black folk and put it on minority, women, children, gays, midgets, humpbacks, anything. But you cannot do anything to address the issues of black folk in this country. That is a cardinal mandate. They even tell our black athletes and our black entertainers and our black actors that you cannot side with black folk on any issue. You got to stay in the closet. And while gays are coming out of the closet, they pushed all the black entertainers and athletes and back into the closet. So black folk cannot come out and support their own people. And the third thing they do is that they lack a structure. And for black folk to be totally effective, that's why you have to read these books, Black Labor Pipe Belts and that Dirty Little Secrets books and all these books. All that stuff is in there for you. Is that you lack a structure. Yes, you have black folk right now marching, as Carl is asking you about. They're marching up and down the street, marching here, marching there, praying here, kneeling there. That's immaterial because you need three levels. You need a grassroots group, point one, on the first floor, but on the second floor, you must have a research a corporation or institution. And thirdly, at the top, you must have wealth. And see, we did that, and I tried to do that with our books. I tried to use Powernomics to create a movement for black folk to organize and come together as a team because racism is a team sport. You either play as a team or you lose. On the second floor, I instituted what's called the Harvest Institute, which is a black research think tank that focuses strictly and solely on black folk. It does not mess around with no minorities and women and gays and transsexuals. Nobody's ever done anything to them. They can go in their closet, stay in there, pull the door behind them, or come out. That's up to them. But don't ask me to approve what they want to do. On the third floor, so I created an institution to give research data to black folk. That's why we have these books and all these CDs. On the third floor, that's where your problem comes in. You got to have a wealthy class at the top that can fund all these things, and that's where how white folks beat you. They got grassroots groups at the bottom. They got extra legal groups like the Ku Klux Klan, the Knights of the Black Horse Brigade. They got the Black Camellias. They got the White Citizens Council. They got the Ku Klux Klan. They got the Tea Parties, all in the streets. And then the top on the second floor, they got institutions like the Heritage Foundation, the American Enterprise Institute, the Cato Institute. That's instructing them and coming up with concepts. And at the third level, whites they have the money. They've got somewhere around 400 to 450 white billionaires in the country. They got enough money there to fund these groups and make sure they can carry out what they want to do. And black folk, we have at the bottom, we have some grassroots elements, but the only think tank we got is the Harvest Institute, and we don't have the little bit of money we got that we should have had in our race is locked in with black entertainers and black athletes, and they're scared to come out and they want to identify the people, so we cannot mobilize to do anything. So having a march or demonstration is useless without gasoline in the car. You got to have all three of those elements to be effective. So, Carl, I'm not sure what these people are planning on doing when they hit the streets, like Black Lives Matter. Matter to whom? What's the end of it? What's on your agenda? What's the plan? What tangible end are you asking for when you start talking about Black Lives Matter? It doesn't.
Right. Hold that thought right there, Doc. We got to take a quick break here. We got to check the traffic and weather again in the DMV. 800-450-7876. Speaking to Dr. Anderson, your calls after the traffic update on 1450 WOL, where information is power. And thank you for staying with us. And our guest, Dr. Claude Anderson, the man with the plan. Later, we're going to be speaking with Dr. Ava Muhammad. Right now, you can reach him at 800-450-7876. Doc, you want to finish what you're saying, or do you want to take another call?
I forget what I was talking about. Oh, yeah. So what I'm saying is that we have to put those things into place, those models. And I guess all those different models are contained in my books. And I hate to be sort of braggadocious because I don't have seen any other books out there trying to do it, so I got to go back and brag about this to encourage black folk to do it and not be against anybody. Just learn how to play as a team. Racism is a team sport, as I said, and whether black folk like it or not, God has arbitrarily sent them to the earth as black people. And therefore they must either, and their mothers and fathers brought them here black. They must play as a team, not to be better or worse than anybody else, but to be exceptional people. Nobody in this nation has been treated like black folk. Not women, not gays, not bitches, anybody else. You're very unique people, and you've been treated and mistreated for almost 500 years. And unless you go back and start focusing on why you are powerless and people take advantage of you, the reason you don't get any advantage, the reason the police shoot you and everybody else mistreat you, is they know that the only thing you can do, that the best you can do, is get out and have a march and walk the march in the rain, cold, and sleet, and heat. For what? That's no power. That's why you don't see any other groups in this country either marching or for just a symbolic reason. You don't see anybody else pushing and promoting social integration but black folk. You got to get resources. What you own and control will determine your opportunities in society and what your benefits will be. Learn to own and control, and that's what build communities and build businesses, and that's what all my books are about. Learning how to be empowered people, become self-sufficient and self-reliant, and don't let anybody keep beating up on you and taking free butt whippings all your life. You're taking them now for 500 years.
800-450-7876, line 5. Dr. Jay Salom calling us from the ATL. Dr. Jay? Is it Dr. J there? All right, let's keep moving. Let's go to line 1. Joshua is in D.C. All right. I'm sorry. Go ahead. This is Dr. J?
No, this is still James, but I guess...
We'll make it quick because we Doc can't stay.
Okay, I just had it was good to hear the doctor talk about, God and so forth. I just wanted to add that, that the African-American...
James, do us a favor. Make it a question because I got a lot of people holding, and you've already asked the question, so I don't want to be rude, but make it a question.
Right. Okay. Doc, I just want to say that, it's good to hear you mention, the part about God and so forth. All
right, we're going to keep moving, James, because you're slowing us down, and I thank you for your call, though. Keep listening. 800-450-7876. Joshua is on line 1. Joshua, you have a question for Dr. Anderson?
Dr. Anderson, are you having any seminars here in the DMV area anytime soon?
I'm not sure. Where's the DMV now?
DMV. D.C. or Maryland, Virginia. You know, the suburban.
Oh, you mean its immediate area?
Yeah.
I think I got a speaking engagement coming up sometime, I think, in November or so, like that around here. But most of the speaking engagements are across the country or either out of the country. I get dozens of invitations, so as I said, all through Europe and Latin America and Canada and Africa. But most of them I don't take anymore because I'm just totally not convinced that black folk really understand the nature of the problem. Until they understand that, I just can't keep running and saying the same thing over and over again to black folk, and it just bounces off the side of their heads.
Okay. My second question is, can you sort of explain the difference between Uncle Tom and Sambo?
Sambo, yeah. Well, that comes from the book Uncle Tom's Cabin, written by Beecher, and back in 1851 and 52. And in that book, Uncle Tom's Cabin, the culprit was in the book was laid out by whites up until about 1947 as being Uncle Tom. Uncle Tom was an extremely old gentleman, but also he was overly religious, and he was overly religious, but he was not very strong. And so, but one thing he did have some principles. He would go out and try to say he would not beat black women. He would not whip black folk who came up short on their cotton picking every day when they came in the evening. He would take cotton out of his own sack and stick it in the bag, and so they could make their way in without getting whipped. He would not squeal on his people. Uncle Tom would not squeal on his people when they ran off or they went across the river and looking for a better life or freedom. He would not also beat any black women who refused to work because they were pregnant. And so, the result of that, Simon Legree, the slave master, he asked Sambo, said, Sambo, I want him to understand I'm his master, and I tell him to do something, I want him to do it. I want him to tell me, keep me posted on these black folk and what they're up to, and quit trying to help them. And so he said, and he must confess that I am his Lord and master on this earth. And Uncle Tom said he wouldn't do that. And he would not do that. He said, and consequently, the slave master asked Sambo to beat him every night until he finally gave in and surrendered and understood that he had to do what the white man told him, and then started quit aligning and helping his own people, and so finally Sambo beat Uncle Tom to death. And so Uncle Tom was not necessarily the bad guy. Uncle Tom was a weak man and overly religious, but he's not a bad guy. He would go out of his way to help his people. And right now we have Uncle Toms in all levels of governments and major corporations. They're not necessarily bad. You can use them. White people made him a bad character before, right close to the World War II. But the real culprit is Sambo. Sambo is a character that in the novel kept telling the white slave master, yes, master, I'll show you how to trees the coons. I'll tell you where these Negroes hide when they run across the creek. I'll beat them for you. And right now you got black folk in all levels of government and corporation in our society right now, and sitting even in some of these different organizations, institutional organizations, that will always go out of their way to mistreat and say something bad about their own people, beat them. And that's why if you go to the Fox channel or the news to NBC, you always got a black person there to do anything he can to put black folk down and whip them to help Simon Legree. So there's a big difference between Uncle Tom and Sambo. So if there's a character that's mistreating black folk, don't call him an Uncle Tom. You be complimenting him. You call him a Sambo.
All right, 800-450-7876. Let's try Dr. J. Psalm again in Atlanta on line 5. Dr. J. I think Dr. J's not there. All right, and let's go to Joshua in D.C. on line 1. Joshua?
I think these people are hiding from you,
All right, yeah, I think they are. Gina's in Charlotte, though. Maybe she has got a question for you. She's on line 3. Gina?
Yeah, I got a question. All right. Hey, how are you? Thank you, Carl. And, Lord, thank you for being here. I love you, Dr. Claude. And my question
thank you. I love you, too, and you stay strong for me, okay?
Yeah, I will. I've left a lot of the books I had, including the two, your three, the Dirty Little Secrets, and the other two, Powernomics and Black Labor, White Wealth. I sent those to my brother who was in prison once.
Right. Well, the new book is coming out soon called The Black Reader, which will cover all this current stuff that you need to understand too. Okay.
Okay, I appreciate it. Here's my question for you. If you love black people, you understand the plight of black people, and when you say control, own everything, control everything, a lot of people that I'm friends with, including myself, we began to operate through trust. Do you know anything about trust and how that would benefit us as a people, where we will own everything and control? I mean, we will own nothing and control everything.
The models for you in owning and controlling Well, just do all you do is replicate what whites do and all these Asian, Arab, Hispanics do. They try to learn how to own and control, but do it vertically rather than horizontal. They come into the country, they're going to try to pick places where there are voids and gaps in the marketplace. Then they want to try to come in at the bottom and control everything from the bottom to the top. That means everything from manufacturing, producing, all the way up to warehousing, wholesale, and then retailing. That's why Arabs come in this country. You go in a city like Detroit, Michigan, which has the largest deposit of Arabs outside of the Middle East. And you go in there, and the Arabs are going to control in Detroit, Michigan, which is a 92% black city. Arabs will control everything from the grocery stores, party stores, liquor stores, discount stores, and gas stations. Out of Detroit, out of 146 gas stations, Arabs control 144 of them. And if you go to the other stores, that's vertically integrated. They're trying to control everything from the bottom to the top. The same thing is with you find the Asians when they come in. They're going to hair shops, wig shops, nail shops, barber shops, and try to control everything from the bottom to the top. Indians, East Indians, they'll try to go into the Dunkin' Donuts and cheap motels and 7-Elevens. Everybody tries to own and control as many as they can, so they get somewhat of a quasi-monopoly. There are things that black folks should be going into, and all this is in my books, where they can easily establish monopolies by doing it from the bottom to the top. You are the only people that have a certain quality of hair or a texture of hair. And yet, why is it that you have the only one that have what they call kinky or the curly or whatever kind of tight hair? Why is it that, on the other hand, I go and look at the business that right now Koreans control the black hair care industry? You've got people, black women, going around all getting these weaves, buying pink hair, red hair, rosy hair that's coming from China. China's controlling from the bottom to the top. Half the hair is being cut off people's head, others coming off of animals, and they're dyeing it and cleaning it and sending and selling it to black women. But they control the wig industry to make sure black folk can't get into it. And they also control the nail shops. Everybody, you go to find black hair products. You're going to find Asians or Koreans are running the hair products for black hair. What black folk must do is learn how to dominate and control and businesses wherever they dominate in population and consumer spending patterns. Wherever you spend the most money. Right now, we spend more money, like for instance, seafood. Black folks eat 3 to 4 times more seafood than whites. You spend $9 for every $1 whites spend. You should have been controlling seafood from the bottom to the top or from the boat to the throat, just like instead of red lobster. You should have had black lobsters, restaurants running from the raising the fish all the way to the restaurants, warehouse, distribution. But we don't do it.
All right. Thanks, Gina. Thank you for your call. Come up on a break real soon, Dr. Anderson. But Jamal out in L.A. Texts a question for you. He says, can blacks in America really afford to be capitalists? He says, we don't own or produce anything, so how can we ever benefit from capitalism as a group? I'll tell you what. Hold that thought. I'll let you respond on the other side, Doc.
Seize the control of anything.
Right. Hold it aside, because we got to take a break. I hear the drummers warming up. I'll let you respond on the other side. 800-450-7876. Speak to Dr. Anderson. Take your calls next on 1450 WOL, where information is power.
Radio.
And thanks for staying with us, and our guest, Dr. Claude Anderson. Momentarily, we're going to be speaking with Dr. Ava Muhammad. Dr. Anderson, before the break, the tweet question from Jamal, can blacks in America really afford to be capitalists? Because we don't own or produce anything, you say, so how can we ever benefit from capitalism as a group?
That is an old classic circular question, which is self-defeating. And I don't even know why anybody would even raise that nowadays, but I guess there must be a reason for somebody to raise that kind of a secular question for me. That's like saying, Dr. Anderson, how can we practice farming since we don't own any farms? And what you have to learn, and the question back in the college, they would say to him, blacks would say, I would if I could, but since I can't, I won't. That's what he's saying to me. But what you have to do is got to learn how to get the resources. You do have resources. Black folk have an annual disposable income that makes them about the 9th richest nation on earth. So why in the world would he say he can't practice capitalism when he got money flowing through his hand? Now, it's not capital at that point. It's money. It is money. It's income. He has disposable income. What you try to do is once you take that money and you hold it inside your own community, inside your own race, and try to circulate it and revolve it around 7 to 10 times or 7 to 12 times before it leaves your hands. And once in that way you triple 7 to 8 times the value of that currency that you had in your hands by keeping it inside your community. Hispanics usually bounces their money in their own hands 6 to 7 times. White bounces theirs 8 to 12 times. Arabs and Hispanics, Arabs and Asians bounce theirs 13 to 14 times. Jewish bounce theirs 18 times. Black money doesn't bounce once. That's why they say I could, I would, but I won't because I can't, because you don't do it. And then secondly, when you bounce that money, you put it into business. You invest it in businesses so that people buy from their own people, and they begin to provide services and goods and jobs and equal opportunities and a tax base for their own people. And once you do that, you begin to produce a benefit. You get more money, you get more wealth by owning a business and in a community than you can. You get money 6 to 7 times faster by having a business rather than depending on a job. And once you get that money and you begin to save it and reinvest it into building more businesses and producing more products, more goods, more services, then that becomes capital. Capital is nothing but wealth. So you get wealth from working and producing, and when you get that wealth and you decide to spend it again, that becomes capital. And so when he asked the question about capital, he's 2 or 3 levels up from what we should be focusing on. You can't get capital until you get wealth. You can't get wealth until you have a job, until you produce products and service and get a benefit and a return on your investment. And so he's jumping from the ground to 2 or 3 floors up. That becomes a circular question that doesn't solve any issues. What it does, it anesthetizes, hypnotizes, and zombifies black folks even have that thought in their heads.
All right, 800-450-7876. Momentarily, we'll be speaking with Dr. Ava Muhammad. Let's go to Carolyn on line 3, calling from the district. Carolyn, you have a question for Dr. Anderson?
Good afternoon. Dr. Anderson, I wanted to ask you, and hi, Carl. I wanted to ask you, I heard you say, Dr. Anderson, in effect, and I'm paraphrasing, that you restrict your speaking engagements because, in effect, your wisdom kind of falls on deaf ears in our community. And so I wanted to ask you your thoughts of whether you believe we as black people would, en masse, be forced into some kind of psychological liberation and force us into self-empowerment and financial liberation if someone like Donald Trump, with his inflammatory extremist views and separatist ideology, whether something like that would get us out of our stupor and force us, similar to segregation and slavery, into self-empowerment and self-liberation.
Yeah, I think so. I think right now Donald Trump is doing black folk a service. He's bringing to the conscious level something that whites and everybody and the liberals and the conservatives have been trying to bury now generally for about 500 years. And that is that black folk are in a world of trouble, that we are carrying 6 to 8 times our fair share of everything that's bad. And contrary to what you might hear otherwise, the unemployment rate in America for black folk is not twice that for whites, double whites. The unemployment rates for whites might be 8%, but for black folk right now in America is over 50%. You got about 38% of all black folk in America beneath the poverty line. You got another third of black folk in America sitting right on the poverty line. If they lose their house, a little bit of money in a car, you're going to have 2/3 of all the blacks in America in poverty. You got black now that in terms of businesses, you own less than 1/2 of 1% of the businesses. You got less than 1/2% of the elected officials. You own less than 1/2% of all the wealth in the nation, and that's out of almost $100 trillion of wealth. Here, black folks sitting there trying to make $1 trillion. You cannot compete. You don't own and control anything, and so anything that black folk can do to start to learn how to play this game and mass their monies and spending their money with their own people, they'd be in a better position to be able to compete. And if Donald Trump would say, hey, I would do this for you. Nobody wants to love Donald Trump. Who cares about Donald Trump? If he would deliver the goods that black folk need that nobody else has delivered for them in 500 years, I want black folk to cease being emotional and start being intellectual. If he would deliver all these benefits that I want to black folk, I don't give a damn if he's the devil. Put it on the table, let black folk get a crack at it. They never had a chance to get it. Nobody else has ever done it for them. There's not one, neither the Democratic Party nor the Republican Party in all these hundreds of years have ever done anything specifically and solely for black folk. They get away and get slipped through the cracks by saying we did it for all people. That ain't doing a damn thing for black folk. Not one has ever done anything specifically and solely for black folk. You've had 44 presidents of the United States. Not one has ever done anything specifically and solely for black folk. If I was dealing with Donald Trump, as I told you already, I would say, hey, here's what I want for black folk in terms of the things I've talked about in economics and politics and schools and the treaties and stuff. Here's what I want from him. I want it for black America, not for me, but for black America. And if I can get those things for black America, I got enough of a basis to answer the question to call it. I can get enough capital base in for black folk in America. They can start practicing playing the game. Right now, they don't own enough land. They don't own any businesses. They don't own their property. They don't own the airlines and the boats and the ships and all the office buildings between New York and Boston and San Diego owned by whites. Go find something that black folk own. You can't find probably 3 blacks that own more than a 2 or 3 story building. We don't own anything. We can't play the game. We're in a real life monopoly game. The monopoly game is based on what you own in terms of land and where the land is located, and also what businesses own the monopoly board. Who owns the electric company, the water company, and the railroads? Here we are in black folk playing in a real life monopoly game for over 100 years, owning nothing. And every time we land on the wrong property, we either go to jail, go bankrupt, and that's it.
All right. Thanks, Caroline. Thanks for your call.
So much. Okay.
All right, Doc, we're going to let you go. We're going to speak to Dr. Ava Muhammad next. But tell us, how can folks get your books?
I want to read these books and get a better understanding. And without these books, I'm as clear as I can make it, I have absolutely no belief that anything else I can see in my vision that's going to help black folk and lift black folk out of this ditch but the powernomics principles and these powernomics indoctrinations and principles. That's it. Other than that, they haven't got a snowball's chance in hell. And what I would say for them to do is they try to get these books and sort of coming together, read them and understanding, get the principles, organize yourself with your own community and your own people, and sort of playing as a team. Play as a team and learn how to mobilize and organize. And the books you can get, there are 4 books. One is Black Labor, White Wealth. The other would show how the maldistribution occurred and timing and everything, all that stuff. The Powernomics book is the second one, showing you how to get out of it. And 2 Dirty Little Secrets books that tells black folk that nothing has happened on this earth that black folk did not directly cause or was not indirectly involved in. That tells them they are very special people, exceptional people, and they should not let anybody put them in a broad, ambiguous basket called minorities and poor folk and people of color and diversity. Stay out of those bags and say, I'm a black person. And blackness, when I say blackness, I'm not talking about your skin color only. I'm talking about blackness is a badge. It's your honor. It's your heritage, your history. That's what you got to fight for. You are exceptional people. Read those books and start standing up being exceptional people. You can get them by going to the Powernomics website. And that's POWERNOMIC, Powernomics.com, and you can order the Power Pack. Get all 4 of those books for $70 immediately. Or if you can't get to the internet and get to the Powernomics.com website, you can call the corporate office. The corporate office is 301-564-6075. Again, the corporate office for the Powernomics Corporation is 301-564-6075. And you order them, or you can go to the Amazon website and order them through those. But the first 2 will be the better ones to get them through because you can get them faster and quicker. But other than that, I wish you all the luck in the world. And as I said to black folk, I'm not going to quit. I'm going to keep fighting as long as I can, because some people say when I say I get tired, that means I'm going to quit. Since I'm black, my friends are black, my kids are black, my grandkids are black, I have no choice but to fight for black folk. I'm not into any isms. I'm not into Catholicism, Hinduism, socialism, communism, Confucianism, Hinduism, Ios. The only thing I'm into is blackism and Aoism. I don't hate anybody. I'm not against anybody. I love black folk, and I'm going to fight for them since nobody else will.
All right. Thanks, Doc.
Okay, buddy.
All right. That's Dr. Claude Anderson.